Before I even start, I would like to say that I really did enjoy the 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank. I think it is a fun and enjoyable game, and I liked it so much in fact that I even have the Platinum Trophy for it. I get it, it seems like I've got a Platinum Trophy for everything and it's just becoming a running gag on this channel. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just showing that I have put time and effort into a game. Therefore, I haven't just chosen to write an essay on a video game that I haven't even played yet. The 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank is what I like to call quirky. Oh, is it quirky? Quirky or quirky? Either way, I need to get rid of these terrible puns because they're taking over my life. The 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank is quirky and it has an exciting story with really eccentric gameplay. And yet sadly for most, it doesn't live up to the other titles in the series. Perhaps due to it not continuing the story of Ratchet and Clank from Into the Nexus, but that's what a reboot is meant to do, retell the story from a new perspective. When Into the Nexus released, all of the fans of the original games were anxious to see what would happen to our favourite Lombax and robots after the events of Into the Nexus. And then, a reboot of our beloved Lombax and robots with a tie-in movie, which is just the game. Yes, I did sit through and watch it all, it was okay. But after seeing the first trailer for the game, I was mind blown. I would discuss with my friends how excited I was about the new Ratchet and Clank, and how I couldn't wait to relive some old memories. Even my friends shared their excitement for the release of the first Ratchet and Clank game on the next generation of PlayStation on the PlayStation 4. As any 16-year-old would do at the time, I waited for my birthday to be able to play the reboot of Ratchet and Clank, and after hearing about all my friends playing it, I was eager to get my hands on the game. On my birthday, I picked up the game and instantaneously put it in my PlayStation 4 and was blown away by the Pixar-esque graphics. My god, is this game a stunner on the eyes, it is absolutely beautiful. And after finishing the game for the first time, I realised that I was so blinded by nostalgia for the franchise that I missed out a few key things that I disliked on repeat playthroughs. First of all, the entire aesthetic of the franchise has sorta kinda completely gone out of the window, with the dirty, rough and rusted look of the world's design being replaced with a squeaky clean aesthetic, which I don't dislike as it does kind of suit the lens flare scenery that is present in the 2016 reboot. And perhaps it's just the older games having more of a rusted aesthetic due to the lower graphical power on older systems, especially compared to now. I do link the dirtier look of the older games on a slightly muted colour palette, especially in Ratchet and Clank 3 as the saturation looks like it's way too high. It may just be me, but that's just an observation on my end. The only planet that really keeps that rusted look is Veldin, and that's the first planet in the 2016 reboot as well as the original 2002 Ratchet and Clank. Oh yeah, did I forget to tell you this is just a watered down rehash of the original game. Apart from Veldin, the dirty look of the game is gone in the 2016 reboot compared to the originals. Ratchet and Clank 2016 has incorporated what I like to call the Pixar effect. Pixar's art style has evolved over the years and has gradually become a semi-realistic style, or even coming under pseudo-realism for a more technical term. Which is a very bold statement to make as pseudo-realism is so subjective to each individual person. Pixar over the past few years has been incorporating tiny little details such as individual hairs seen in Monsters Inc. And then you can see the exact same in Ratchet and Clank, with Ratchet's fur now being much more of a feature than ever before. This certainly isn't a dig at the game whatsoever, I just thought I'd like to talk about it as it's these tiny details in the game and their influences from other media. Insomniac also went for this art direction as to coincide with the movie. The tie-in movie was okay to say it plainly, and since I'd already played the game which did have some of the scenes from the film, I did know what was going to happen in the film. But this is about the game, not the film, remember that. When the game swaps from the crisp movie scenes in the letterbox style to then having the game rendered cutscenes, it's quite jarring. More momentarily immersion breaking than anything else. I quickly adjusted, but it's just these small little things that I'd noticed on repeat playthroughs. The actual story though of Ratchet and Clank 2016 is quite pleasant. I don't dislike the 2016 story. I personally found it to be very good for a bit of casual fun. But with some of the changes to the tone of the characters, I'm gonna have to hand you off to Monty Zander, a wonderful and up-and-coming YouTuber who will be going over the character changes and the overall tone of the game and how it has changed. Now Monty, without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Oh boy, I've been waiting for this. Thanks for the chance to repay you for helping out with my Among Us video. Now, I'm the least funny guy I know, but even I'm aware that Ratchet & Clank Remake's humour is as satisfying as a DVD screensaver. You know you're getting riled up just watching it, stubbornly refusing to hit the corners. This is what Ratchet & Clank Remake's jokes are like. People like to defend this game by saying the remake's jokes aren't bad, they're just different, but that's wrong, and I'm going to prove it in the funniest way I know, using empirical evidence and carefully researched humour theory. The psychologist Peter McGraw proposed a theory on humour, the benign violation theory. He argued that in order for a joke to be effective, it has to meet 3 conditions. Number 1, a situation is a violation. It threatens your view of how the world should be. Number 2, a situation is benign. A situation is not immediately upsetting. And number 3, these things happen simultaneously, at the same time. He also argued that situations which are purely benign are not funny, they're boring, like Mario unclogging your drain. Situations which are pure violations are just upsetting, like Mario stabbing Luigi. Sorry, buddy. But if you can meet that sweet spot, then you've got yourself an effectively written joke. I'm going to add a 4th condition, however, and you'll see why when we get into Ratchet & Clank Remake. The 4th condition is, you have to connect the violation with the benign on your own without it being explained. Now, of course, there are a lot of variables to bear in mind here, such as delivery, audience, etc. We're not necessarily going to factor this in today, but do be aware that the most common criticism levied against Ratchet & Clank Remake was Insomniac didn't know who they were making this for. A lot of the jokes are basically internet meme humour. They've lost their crudeness, their violation, and trade it for references and randomness. Let's compare a couple of scenes from the original and the remake. Sorry in advance, over-explaining these scenes may just ruin them for you forever, but that's what I'm here for. First, here's the original and renowned plumber scene.
Dad blast it!
Look, plumber's crack.
What did you just say?
I said, look, the plumber's back.
All right, wise guy. Shouldn't you be on one of them escape transports?
Escape transports?
Newsflash, giant robots attacking! The escape transports are taking all the rich folks off this god-darn planet.
So why aren't you on one?
Socioeconomic disparity.
What?
He hasn't got enough bolts.
Working people have to wait for Captain Quark to save us.
Well, got anything worth a lot of bolts?
I got this thing. Shows 2 weirdos ditching their ship. It's got coordinates to a desert planet, too.
An infobot. Ratchet, we could use that.
Geronimo!
Did he just slide down a sewer pipe?
So I counted at least 4 moments where, if I didn't laugh, I at least breathed a little out of my nose. Let's walk through them. Our first effective joke is Ratchet pointing out the plumber's crack. This joke works on multiple levels. It's literally toilet humor, and we are talking about a plumber. It's a violation in the sense that Ratchet is talking about a character's naughty area, and because of graphical limitations, the plumber's crack isn't actually animated, making it bizarre that Ratchet is able to point it out. It's also benign because, well, it's a plumber's crack. It's not exactly traumatizing. The second joke is that the plumber asks Ratchet to repeat himself, and he quickly backtracks, saying, "Look, the plumber's back." This is a violation because by this part of the game, we haven't met the plumber yet, so he can't be back, and it's benign because the plumber waves it off, not being offended by Ratchet's odd phrasing. Joke 3, socioeconomic disparity. Now, the humour behind this is arguably a little bit classist, but who cares? It's a violation because the plumber is clearly working class. He's got a silly voice, his design with the overalls and the big cartoonish eyes make him appear to be a thoroughly uneducated character, so it's strange he's coming out with at least for a 10-year-old me, big words like socio-economic disparity. Also again, for the young gaming audience at the time, we probably didn't even know what this phrase meant, so revisiting it years later makes us smile as we come to the realization of what it means without needing it to be explained, meeting condition 4. The final and fourth joke is the famous Geronimo, with the plumber just leaping into the sewer pipe. Ratchet commenting on it is necessary here because we're not immediately aware it's a sewer pipe. This is a violation as well because, well, as far as we know, plumbers don't get around through sewer pipes. They're gross and not something we'd want our own plumbers to do. It's also benign because, if anything, we've just learned some useful information from watching him slide away. We can probably head down a sewer pipe. It capitalizes on the crude humor we've seen already. Now, let's look at the remake's bastardized version.
Oh, hello there. I'm glad you're here. Hey, have we met before? Because I'm getting a touch of the old deja vu.
I don't think so.
Huh. Well, guess the old think tank could use a good plumbing. Anywho, I've been trying to get a distress call to the Galactic Rangers ever since Drax forces showed up.
This entire region is overrun with Blargian dropships. We need to get you out of here.
Well, I can't go anywhere until I get this here infobot into the hands of Captain Quark.
We were on our way to speak with him when our ship was shot down. Perhaps we could take a look.
Oh, sure thing. I swapped it from one of those Blarg soldiers. Here you go. I see you're having a little transportation trouble. Why don't I meet you by your ship? We'll get you squared away and ready to fly.
Did that guy just slide down a sewer pipe?
The scene opens with a close-up shot of the plumber's crack. Now, yes, this is a violation and benign humour for the same reasons as in the original, but it's spoiled by breaching my fourth condition. We can't connect the violation with the benign on our own. The game is visually over-explaining its own joke to us. It's making reference to the plumber's crack joke from the original, rather than just quipping it out like before. The plumber asking if he's met us before and stating he's getting a touch of the old deja vu is also clearly supposed to be a joke, but it's not a violation of anything, it's just benign, making it boring. At best, avid fans of the franchise might smile knowingly because the plumber appears in every game, but Ratchet's confusion will generally just be mirrored by the player base. Does the plumber recognize Ratchet? Is he aware of other realities? What is this guy hiding? Our third attempted and failed joke. The plumber smacks himself on the side of the head. It's a minor violation, you shouldn't hit yourself on the side of the head with a wrench, like Chief Wiggum scratching his head with his gun, but it's too benign. There isn't enough of a violation here because it's not really threatening to the plumber like Wiggum with his gun. And again, the game over-explains its joke with two brief musical cues for each tap. We don't need this. Musical cues for jokes are often the bane of good comedy. It over-prepares the audience for a laugh. Finally, our fourth joke. It's a good clean reference to the previous game. It has a violation, it's benign, but the lengthening of the joke causes a slight problem here. In the original, Ratchet just asks, did he just slide down a sewer pipe? It sounds natural and organic, like he's having a bit of banter with Clank. However, in the remake, and I know I'm being pedantic here, he asks, did that guy just slide down a sewer pipe? By changing the delivery, it makes the joke last longer, ultimately, again, over-preparing the audience for a punchline that never really comes. This is what we often see in jokes which feel forced, or in sitcom jokes like The Big Bang Theory.
Somebody's been taking bitchy pills.
You may have noticed as well that this scene was longer than the originals, despite having less time for banter and jokes. This is both because the delivery of the lines are much slower than the original. There are weird pauses between each utterance, like Ratchet and Clank are politely waiting their turn, minimizing any sense of being rogue badasses. And it's also because a lot of the remake scenes are obsessed with exposition and funneling the player along to the next arena fight. The remake's dialogue is both too slow and too fast at the same time. Two conditions which fit perfectly into my scientific theory, the Ratchet and Clank remake his pants theory. Anyway, there you go, an analysis of two Ratchet and Clank scenes, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the remake scientifically is not as funny as the original. Okay, maybe there's a shadow of a doubt, but what did you expect? I only had 1,000 words to make my point. Enjoy the rest of the video, and thanks again, Hydranator.
I would just like to say a special thank you to Monty for having a feature in this video. Thank you very much, my friend. But let's carry on. The gameplay in the 2016 reboot is classic Ratchet and Clank, always satisfying and enjoyable. The movement always feels so fluid, as if it was meant to be. Pulling out a weapon and then strafe jumping is honestly one of the most satisfying things in this game. Even front flipping over a ledge or using Clank to glide over to a new location is so smooth. Guns in the 2016 Ratchet & Clank feel varied enough that you don't generally stick to one weapon for too long. I would constantly be swapping between weapons, whether that be the Rhino or even the Mr. Zircons. Ratchet & Clank for me has never done a bad job to approaching combat. It's always very fluid and responsive, and therefore is a good ratio when it comes to your mobility on the battlefield, as well as your combat in general. The combat is just as fun as it looks online. The variety in your weapon wheel means that you never have to worry about using the same gun over and over again. And I feel like this might just be because I'm on New Game Plus, but the boss fights, while still being very fun, now pose much less of a threat. Especially in the final fight against Dr. Nefarious, as I breezed through that fight in a matter of seconds thanks to the Rhino. And in some aspects this takes away from the challenge of the whole fight, but I did find it to be rather satisfying. As generally, depending on what enemy you're fighting, you will have to use a certain type of weapon to deal the most damage to them. The worlds in general are very nice and bright, as well as colourful, but feel a lot more linear than in previous titles for one reason or another. Gaspar, I'd say, is the only open world level in the 2016 reboot. Flying with your jetpack and collecting brains is quite quirky. I really need to stop this. It's becoming a force of habit kind of thing at this point. On Gaspar, the area is easily one of the largest in the franchise. Gaspar isn't my favourite planet in the game, but it is certainly one of the more enjoyable ones. Other planets felt way too linear, as if there was a sign telling you where to go. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the planets are bad by any means, I just wish that there was a bit more of an open environment for the player to traverse around. The whole gameplay loop in the Ratchet & Clank franchise has always been satisfying, whether you're gathering bolts from a group of enemies that you've just killed, which is so satisfying, might I add, or finding hidden golden bolts, which you can get extras like cosmetics and skins, incentivizing you to look around a bit more and smell the roses. Due to the character changes in the game, such as personality traits of our beloved characters being changed or tweaked to fit the tone of the new game and the coinciding movie, the older fans of the Ratchet & Clank franchise felt a disconnect between the original iteration of these beloved characters and their newer counterparts. I remember in the first game, Ratchet was bratty and didn't really get along very well with Clank, but in a few games' time their friendship grew. But in the 2016 reboot, Ratchet is very nice. Like, too nice, like it's his personality for being nice. And because of that, Ratchet and Clank are best buddies practically from the very start of the game. And I think one of the main reasons Insomniac are now ditching this reboot timeline and instead are continuing the Into the Nexus timeline in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, because for a year now we have speculated a sequel to the 2016 reboot, but clearly Insomniac felt that the reboot left nowhere to go. Otherwise they probably would have just done a reboot of Ratchet & Clank 2 going commando, and then Ratchet & Clank 3 up your arsenal. The list could go on, literally. The 2016 reboot of Ratchet & Clank clearly boxed up any future potential for a sequel, as otherwise they would just be treading on old ground and repackaging their older work. And I'm glad. Although the reboot brought in newer and younger fans to the series and certainly ramped up hype for the PlayStation 5 exclusive Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, it didn't do everything right. Little tweaks and changes made the game feel slightly off, and that meant that I was slightly disconnected to the reboot story. The characters weren't the same as when I assume many others were younger, but everything changes with time and that's okay. 2016's Ratchet & Clank was a solid experience full of life, colour, fun and a few minor changes to the writing, but nothing too bad. The game offered a fun and casual experience to create some mayhem on alien planets and to fly a cool spaceship and use a bolt load of guns. Honestly, there are way too many. It's just such a shame that the 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank didn't really lead anywhere in the potential for sequels. Instead, it was definitely a retelling of the origin story, which I am totally fine with, but I just wish if they did do the reboot once again, that they'd go back to more of the classic character traits that we have seen in the earlier games in the franchise. But 2016's Ratchet and Clank isn't perfect, and to be honest, what really is? But thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe and turn on that notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you, and goodbye.